Good morning. We know that we have our bond people here this morning that will introduce themselves about the school bond. And who here has not been here before? Raise your hand. Okay, so most of you all know, I'm going to call them Sarah's Rules of Order. First of all, we have people that come in. We never know who's going to come, number one. And they come in respectfully, starting at 8:30. So it's only a few of us here, so you'll see. Especially, I think there are a lot of people that are interested in the bond. And but what we do, we facilitate. I'm Laura McClady and Mary Johnson, as well as Nathalie and Saritha and Jackie, Colleen Ivory will be here, and Winston Robinson. We're the facilitators. And we will have you introduce yourselves. We like to start off with a word of prayer, and Saritha would lead us in a word of prayer.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Let us pray, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful that we've had a leader like Sarah Stevenson. We know the past. We know our focus. Help us to stay focused. Help our group to stay unified as we are now. We love each other. We love working together. Lord, help us through this session and all sessions following this one. It's in your name, Jesus, we pray for our children, our nation, our state, our city, our county, our neighborhoods, our homes. God bless us all. It's in your Son, Jesus' name, we all pray. Let us say together, amen.
Amen.
Steve Johnston is also a part of our little crew here at Tuesday Forward, as well as Thomas Moore. And you are being recorded, and we do live streaming. We usually face that way, but we had a problem with our camera, so that's why we're facing this way today. But we would like to let you know that we are the facilitators, and what we will do is recognize those that have questions by raise of hands. We try to be, we try to notice those and help each other out to see who would ask the next question. But we would ask you to, each one of you, to give us an opening statement, and you have 2 to 3 minutes to do that. And once you do that, and we start taking the questions, we will recognize and allow those that have their hands raised to ask you a question. We ask them to ask a question within 30 seconds. Sometimes they will give you a minute, which is okay, and you would answer it in a minute or two. And we are supposed to leave this room around 10 o'clock, so we try to leave a few minutes available after the end of the presentation for announcements. Sometimes we don't get to those. So just expect that there will be others that will be coming, asking questions about supporting the bond. So without any further ado, we'll start. And please use your microphones. And we only have those 2 over there, so you might want to put one on the other end, so 2 can use it on that end and 2 can use it on this end. So I'll just let you all start. And since we know Mary, and Mary is a regular, we're going to start off with Mary. You all don't mind?
Okay, I don't mind. Good morning. My name is Mary McCrae, and I am co-chairing the Vote Yes for the Bond campaign. On your tables, you have a notebook like this, which I will collect at the end. The notebook is a composite of all of the projects that is in the bond package. Plus, we have it set up where you see what is there for the county commission side and what is there for the school board members side that represent each of those districts. Also, you get the specs for every one of the projects that's in there. And without further ado, I'm going to go on and start talking about it. So once again, thank you for being here this morning and allowing us to bring some light and some information about our bond projects. This is a $2.5 billion bond project, sorely needed, because a lot of the buildings that are part of this project were either built in the 50s or the 60s. And that means these are some old buildings. There's even one that was originally built in 1937, and that is Northwest School of Arts. If you look at the front part of that building, you can see the aging there. And that building has had several renovations, but it was originally built in 1937 and was the old West Charlotte High School. So that is one that's part of this project. Also, there's 4 parts to this bond project. One is replacement, and that means that it's going to be a new school built to replace the old. Some will be on-site and some will be off-site. The 2 that's going to be off-site will be Allen Brook, and the other one will be Berry Hill. Dennis is here to correct me if I say something inadvertently wrong. So that's okay. Next is renovations. And I will let you know that a lot of the renovations is only in parts of the schools that are being put there to make sure that the learning environment is up to par. And renovations are there. Now, some of these sites cannot stand renovation anymore. It's just like burying your dollars in the backyard. And a big rain come along and just roll it on down the hill with the rest of it. So that's why renovation is not there for every one of these projects. New relief schools, and I think they explain themselves. Those are schools that are going to be built that will relieve overcrowdedness in surrounding schools. And the last one is design. Now, design is the first phase of the process to develop a new building. It will be complete, the design part will be completed and permits issued prior to the start of construction. And if any of you were around with West Charlotte, think about when we all gathered there in their foyer to look at the designs that were set up for West Charlotte. And then we chose the ones that we liked. That's what a design process is like. On October 19th, there's going to be a design showcase, and some of the high schools and the new buildings that's going to be a part of the design will be there. Architects will be there with their rendering of those new buildings. I've had a sneak peek at the new Second Ward High School design, and it is really fantastic. It is fabulous. So I encourage each of you, if you're able, to come out to South Med High School for the design showcase on October 19th, starting at 6 o'clock. Your support of these bonds is an affirmation to the many children who are going to be affected by this bond, that you believe they deserve a new building to learn in, a new building that stimulates their learning, a new building that encourages them to be proud of where they are attending schools. We have some fabulous custodians in this district. I have to give them their props, because those custodians keep some of these buildings standing. And they come in earlier so that they can make sure there's nothing leaking, no towels are falling, and the floors, they can block off the floors if the floors are sagging. So our custodians do a lot, but we owe a lot to students, that we care about where they learn and how they learn. And research has shown that kids do better when they enter a new facility where the learning environment is conducive to some learning. And I'll stop there.
Great. It's hard to follow Mary. Good morning, everybody. My name is Janet LaBar, and I'm the president and CEO of the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. For those of you who don't know, the Charlotte Alliance is the successor to what used to be the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, which has its early days serving this community back to 1870s as the Board of Trade. It merged with another entity called the Charlotte Regional Partnership back in the fall of 2018, and I came into the role in the spring of 2019. So I've lived in Charlotte for 4 years and some change. My husband and I are proud parents of 3 CMS children, and it's an honor to be here with all of you. I also wanted to acknowledge the life of Sarah Stevenson. While I didn't have the opportunity to meet her or know her, I understand the significant impact she's made to the community and appreciate that you all are continuing her legacy of leadership and civic engagement here. So the Alliance, we are very proud to be the voice of business and the regional economic development organization here supporting such a critically important cause, passing a bond that's going to make our schools stronger. And so you might wonder, why does the business community care about a school bond? And it's pretty simple. A strong public school is vital to the health and success of our community and our economy and our future. So we are seeing a tremendous amount of growth here in the Charlotte region. We see about 113 people new into the community every day. And so that growth is just adding continued pressure. Growth is good, but some growth, is not without its struggles. And so we are one of the fastest growing and most successful economies in the country and have been over the past few decades. The region is a global leader in innovation and manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, the list goes on and on. But we believe that one of the keys to a successful future and to building new businesses and making sure that we continue to innovate and grow is education. That simply is the backbone of our community. So stronger schools will produce a more educated workforce, and those students are going to ensure that we grow with prosperity and opportunity for years to come. We know and we believe that a stronger public school system is what our students deserve, but it also benefits every single person in Mecklenburg County. The Vote Yes for Schools, or for the BOND coalition, includes people from all parts of the county and all walks of life. And we all agree on one thing: Mecklenburg County needs a strong public school system. And if voters approve these bonds, we all agree it's going to strengthen our schools and strengthen our local economy. Now, as Mary detailed in her remarks, many of the school buildings are 60 or more years old, and the bond will feature 30 transformational projects that replace or renovate outdated and unsafe schools across our county. Our students deserve the opportunity to learn in safer, state-of-the-art schools, and studies show academic performance improves in healthier and safer learning environments. Schools in some of our fast-growing suburban communities across the county are overcrowded. Again, Mary mentioned the relief schools. Schools in older established neighborhoods across Charlotte are also outdated, and they just don't meet modern safety standards. This school bond addresses both problems. We understand that some in our community wanted even bigger bonds, and some wanted a smaller price tag. The County Commission had to balance the needs of our growing region with the cost and the impact on residents, and we believe that they have found a sensible balance. I'm going to stop with my remarks here, and I don't know if Doug or Dennis have anything to add, but I just appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you, and I just want to underscore that the business community very much believes in the passage of these bonds. We understand the concerns that have been raised by many of our community partners, and we're here to listen. We're here to hopefully engage and be a good partner.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Douglas Wilson. I am with the Bond campaign with Mary and Janet as well. Just want to echo what was said. One, definitely want to recognize the life of Sarah Stevenson. Definitely was a staple, still is a staple to our community. I remember meeting her many years ago when coming to Tuesday morning breakfasts at the time. I've lived in Charlotte now for about 22 years. I lived in 3 states my whole life. I lived in New York, South Carolina, and here. In New York, I went to a school, a Catholic school that was built in 1945. I had a hard time learning at that school, one, because I was born with a stutter, and I was born with slight hearing loss. So I had a hard time speaking and hearing at the same time, but I was able to persevere and graduate from that school. When I moved to South Carolina, the high school was brand new high school. And I was able to learn better at that school because at that time, it was an advanced state-of-the-art school. So I put myself in the shoes of children here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg that are going to schools that were built the same year my mother was born. And I'm not trying to make my mother look like she's old, but my mom is turning 80 next month, and a lot of the schools were built when she was born. The school that Murray was talking about that was built in 1937, my late father was born in 1935. So I'm looking at that and saying to myself, we need schools that are built for the century that we are currently living in now. And as someone who has had learning disabilities in the past, what has helped me learn was a better environment. And this is the reason why I have decided and proudly decided to go back the school bonds, and I ask humbly that all of you do the same.
I don't know if we can let Dennis talk.
Yeah, good morning. Dennis Lacaria, Executive Director of Facilities Planning and Real Estate at CMS. So I'm not part of the Vote Yes committee. I'm here to provide information. We can use public school resources to support the bond, but I'm here to be a resource for questions specific to the projects in the bond. I'm really excited by the fact that what we did this time was we prioritized projects through the use of an educational environment index, which was a modification to our rubric that we've used since 2006. And it actually took into consideration those factors that negatively impact teaching and learning, like lack of windows in a classroom, noisy fan coil units, air conditioning that interferes with how students can hear. So the transfer of knowledge being impeded by the physical environment is a known variable in education, and so we're trying to improve student outcomes by improving their environments. I have been in Charlotte since 1983. Malachi Green started dragging me to Tuesday morning breakfast as a teenager, so I've been here on and off for years and really have appreciated this community and obviously Miss Sarah. So glad to see things continuing to progress. I'm also the son of a CMS educator. My mother taught at Jan Alexander for about 324 years, give or take. So really, what's that? Murray Lacaria? Yeah. So really glad to be able to try and continue to impact the lives of children in this district positively through the facilities that we provide.
What Dennis did not tell you was that Malachi was his mentor, and he wasn't a teenager, he was old then. And also what Dennis forgot to say is that the good thing about this bond relative to what's happening now is that CMS does not have to purchase any property.
Okay, let's stick with the mics so Steve can get all of us. Our first question comes from Gary.
Good morning, team. Gary Young. We have leaders that I'll leave nameless because of this setting that we're in, on record saying Charlotte will not become another Atlanta, meaning we will not enhance Black wealth throughout Charlotte the way Atlanta and other cities have. So I guess my question, what specific measures do you have in place to ensure minority, particularly Black businesses, will beneficially reap from the $2.5 billion spent? That something like this exasperates the economic segregation across Charlotte when we do not spend that money accordingly, and it's always spent in traditional measures. So what specific measures do you have in place to ensure minority, particularly Black-owned businesses, will be a part of this $2.5 billion being spent?
The one good thing about
the live streaming doesn't pick you up without the microphone as well.
The one good thing about the school board is that we have it in policy and we have it in practice. How much is given to each group when it comes to the projects that we have. Now, I can't tell you the specifics of it because it is a bidding process. Legally, CMS is not allowed to just say, okay, Mr. Young, we're gonna give this project to you. We cannot do that, that's against the law. Everybody will be up our backsides for doing things like that, and that's normal. You have to look at the bidding process, and Dennis is more familiar with the bidding process than I am, because he's over in that building, so I'll let him go into further explanation. But CMS does have it in policy, and they do it in practice.
Yeah, so in the 2017 bonds, and if you go to cmsbondconstruction.com, there's a website where you can actually see all of the projects. You can actually see the projects that are in construction. There's live cameras, so if there's somebody in your house that likes to watch Tonka trucks roll around, you can actually watch that happen. But the dashboard includes information like our MWSBE spend, and so we were at almost 46% of the dollars from the 2017 bond going to minority, women, and small business enterprises. You'll see the goals that the Board of Education hit there has outlined for those categories. You'll see that we've exceeded those goals in just about every case. Obviously, we have ongoing outreach. We have an MWSBE department that's integrated with our capital program services that does a lot of outreach and engagement and development. But again, part of the challenge obviously is that we're selecting a construction manager based on lowest responsive bid. And they're the ones who are putting together their subs and the subs to their subs. And we're selecting based on qualifications for that CM, whether or not they meet those qualifications, and whether or not they're the lowest responsive bidder. So there are things that we have to do that state statute spells out, and we cannot do specific set-asides, but we have aspirational goals. We've exceeded those goals. We want to work on how else we can drive participation, and that's something that we need a lot more community effort and engagement on, because it actually behooves us if we have more joint ventures, if we develop more firms, if we have more firms bidding our work, because that creates more opportunity for everybody, but also, quite honestly, it helps us manage the costs of our program, right? Because one of the aspects here is that there will be a tax increase tied to this program. We know that, we're not shying away from that fact, but there are ways that the amount of that tax increase can be mitigated. One of those is if inflation isn't as bad as the county economists projected, and another is if we're able to accomplish our projects for less money per project. And so you do that by having more bidders available. So we absolutely want to ensure that we have as many folks engaged in the process and available and aware of the work and the opportunities and the possibilities as possible.
And I would like to echo as well, and Gary, I appreciate your question and appreciate the conversations you and I have had around making sure that we increase supplier diversity across the community, and in particular, the opportunity that's available with the CMS bond. $2.5 billion of spend is a big ticket. So I want to acknowledge, one, that CMS has done a great job in the past bond and in years past, making sure that there's transparency in the dashboard that Dennis mentioned. I also want to acknowledge the commitment that CMS and Dr. Hill have heard make mention of in working with specifically the Black Political Caucus and the Economic Development Committee to say that we want to do more, and we will do more. And so I think that's good news. I think the business community, specifically the Alliance, is encouraging that collaboration and sitting down and making sure that they can work together so that those opportunities are made more visible, perhaps, not saying that there hasn't been, but I think the more that we can have conversations together, the more we can co-create some solutions and opportunities, so that if there were projects that maybe it was lesser known to some members of the community, that we can elevate those, we can market those, we can make sure that those businesses are seeing those and can participate equitably across the community. So I just wanted to underscore that the Alliance is also committed to encouraging that, to holding ourselves collectively accountable, and I think that's a really important point.
Okay, Tom.
Good morning. I wanna know, like I've lived in several places, I wanna know why we think newer schools are better schools. Instead of like you go to Italy, they got schools 2,000 years old, the building. And we have one of the worst education systems in the world. So why we think newer schools make better schools?
Newer schools can drive the technology that is needed in order for teachers to teach nowadays. It's no more chalkboards, no more blackboards. Everything is a whiteboard. And I do a lot of volunteer work in one of our older high schools. And when a group of kids that were working on their projects all had their laptops, and they were working across the room from them, those kids couldn't get on their laptops because the 29 kids who were doing their projects, plus the teacher driving it on the whiteboard, across the hall, they could not use theirs because the system was going to shut down if the other class had gotten on. That's part of the problem right there. And see, unless you're in those buildings and know what the situations are, it's hard for you to understand. But being in there and working with a small group who were doing their projects, and these projects are part of their state assessment. So they have to do them. So these teachers have to set up a board that shows that this class is going to do projects this day, that class the next day, that class the next day. So you got 5 classes on that one hall who have to do these state projects because that's their assessment. And they do them at midterm and they do them at the end of the semester. So that's one of the problems that I have observed in a lot of our older buildings.
And just to piggyback on that, I hear what you're saying. I know that, our school systems, both here and across the country, in particular for children of color, should be better. It needs to be better. I visited Allenbrook Elementary School, which is not too far from here. And that school was built, I think, in 1966. That school is infested with asbestos. And if you were to try to repair the wall where that asbestos is, it will spread throughout the school. So that school needs to be replaced. There are HVAC systems in the school that are so loud that the teacher has to use a microphone to teach. And when you're teaching young children, you need their undivided attention. If they can't pay attention to you, they can't hear you. Take it from me, I was one of those kids 30 years ago. They're not going to be able to learn. And I think that in order to improve or narrow the gap between Black students and white students when it comes to learning, there's different things we have to get right in place. Of course, we have to have a curriculum that will help that. We have to have teachers, we have to recruit teachers that come here to teach. That's a whole nother conversation with teachers. But the other part is you want a facility where students can come, learn, and grow, and where teachers can effectively teach. So that's why it is important for us to build these schools that, and I know we're going to keep hearing it, it's been around since John Kennedy was president. To me, that's a long time ago. And again, I'm not trying to say, folks are old or whatever, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, that was a long time ago. And again, for me, it's you're going to hear me come from a different perspective because I was one of those kids. I may not have been in Charlotte, I was in New York City at the time, but I just know what it's like to learn in an environment, try to learn in an environment where you can't learn because of the surroundings. That's all.
And I'll just mention it isn't just the new schools, it is also the improvements and the modernization of both technology, but also bringing the systems up. My kids started the school year and the HVAC wasn't working, so it was hot. And so they were completely distracted, the water fountains weren't working. So the teachers were like, bring them with extra water because the water fountains aren't working. The other thing, our oldest daughter is in middle school in CMS, and they installed the what do you call those things when you walk through for safety to make sure that there weren't weapons, scanners. So my reaction to that was, well, at least I'm glad there's another mechanism to making sure that the school is safe, because there are other things that the community and community health can't control. So at least there was another piece that was being installed in her school. But scanners are, I'm not sure if that's part of the project list, but those are important too.
It is, yeah, and so can we have school safety and security concerns that probably don't exist in the same way in other countries. So we have to take all of that into consideration. So security vestibules, cameras, the evolved scanners, all of those things are part of the projects that we're doing to ensure student and staff safety. And also, quite honestly, we have buildings that are being replaced where there's doors that open directly to the outside, not even to a hallway. And so if a student's got one eye on the door, they've only got one eye on their teacher. And so creating a more safe and secure environment also helps with teaching and learning.
Good morning. You mentioned that the 2017 bonds, 46% of that was women and small business. What percent of that 46% were minority?
Specific figures.
I don't know this.
You got the dashboard.
The dashboard's not, oh, I do have the dashboard, I'm sorry. Okay. The dashboard has been updated, Dennis, that's why I don't have the newer one. But 87% has been completed. And let me put my glasses on that. Look at that, those numbers are small, Dennis.
Yeah, so you don't take my word for it. It's 19.3% is minority business enterprise expenditures. So out of the 46%, 24% was women, and we're around 2% for the small business enterprise.
The updated dashboard shows 20% for minority.
Okay, good. What's on me? Alright. You built schools like Waddell when I was a junior advanced. A few years later, it was closed. You have buildings that you've renovated, remodeled, and rebuilt, but the performance continues to decline with our students. Building these schools aren't solving the problems these kids are truly facing. It's only enhancing the coming gentrification of these neighborhoods. I tell people all the time in West Charlotte, in 10 years, they're not going to be the ones enjoying that school. But how do these schools help that child at Allenbrook, whose true educator is the streets around him or her?
Repeat that question.
How do these schools, these new fancy schools being built over off of Hasten, where we have Thomasboro and Allenbrook, or even the West Charlotte High, where I know there's plans to come down and do some things down there on that corridor. How do these schools really solve the issue that's really plaguing these kids, which is the neighborhoods and the crime and the streets around them? Because a new school doesn't solve the issue, the fact that the kid can't eat at night because their parents doesn't have a good job.
Ms. Young, that's been my nemesis all along, that the school board cannot do it all. It is a city and a county problem. All three governmental entities have got to work together to improve the neighborhoods. A school is no better than the neighborhood that it sits in. And if you improve the neighborhood, your schools are going to improve. And we've been very slow about improving our neighborhoods and the things, the entities that help kids in the neighborhoods. Even our churches can play a role in that, and I've always talked about that. Our churches can help out with afternoon tutoring and things of that nature. So a school can be no better than the neighborhood that it sits in. And I'll stick to that. And you can go to any neighborhood. If children don't have a decent park and rec facility to play in that is safe, it's not a safe neighborhood because you don't see children out there. They know they can't be out there. So you've got to improve the neighborhoods. Now, I'm going to use West Charlotte as an example, only because I've seen their data. West Charlotte's academic data, they have exceeded their growth because they had a new attitude when they went into their new building. And I've had students that said that, not teachers, it was students that said it. Said, we feel entirely different. We feel valued because of our new building and the things that we have in our new building. So students see the value of this new construction and they take advantage of the new construction once they're in there. So it is a trifold, a three-legged stool, city, county, and school board. They all gotta work together because the school board cannot take on all of the responsibilities, even though the community seems to think they can. They can't. They cannot. Because school board doesn't create its own money. They are solely dependent on the county when it comes to Mecklenburg. They are dependent on the state. And we know that the state is sort of backing off of their commitment to public education. So we're dependent upon the county now. City doesn't give anything to the school system.
Yeah. Oh, it's my turn. Okay. Thanks everybody for being here. My name is Shay Abdullah. I'm a small minority business owner, former CMS employee, and now I work with a nonprofit as well. My question is around equity. We know that throughout time, the school system has been inequitable to the neighborhoods that suffer the results and the consequences that we all know have been built in over time. Is that a factor that's built into your decisions of what schools to go to? Secondarily, the inequity in distribution to nonprofits is also pretty substantial. So people on the ground, people like many of the people here that have these great questions and live in these neighborhoods don't have the ability to access the funds to improve them that are out there because of that inequity. Is that being addressed in anything that you guys are looking at with the school bonds, et cetera? And then how are you empowering organizations that are focused on improving the community through this school bond initiative and this spend, et cetera?
So the first thing, and I think, and Mary touched on this a little bit, so boards of education don't have taxing or funding authority, right? So we're wholly dependent on others for our funding resources. The capital dollars, the proceeds from the bonds can only be used for construction. They're not used for services. They're not used for programs. They're used solely to either buy land, which we've intentionally decided not to do with these funds, or go into building schools. And unlike cities and counties, boards of education can't do affordable housing. We can't do airports. We can't do parking authorities. All we can do is schools. It's in the state constitution and it's in state statute. So everything that we're doing is bound by those sorts of things. So not to say that we don't see the value of the programs and all of that, but that the programmatic piece is on the operational side, not on the capital side. But we absolutely did look at the inequities of the system in the translated in the learning environment. So recognizing that a classroom that doesn't have windows, right, which Bruns is being replaced right now. It's got 12 classrooms that has no windows, and there's no fresh air in any of those classrooms, none. They've got fan coil units that recirculate the air. Beverly Woods is the exact same school. So we have to look at those situations where they exist throughout the county, because we have kids with these situations throughout the county. But absolutely, if you will look at where the projects are distributed, District 2, the west side, is where the vast majority of those projects are, because those are where a lot of those situations exist, and that's what we prioritize.
I'm sorry I'm late, but it doesn't take away from what I gotta ask you. I noticed that in your diatribe, Ms. McCray, you never mentioned the word home. Also, I noticed that minority is now greatly diluted. So when I hear you talk about, and not just you, Ms. McCray, but the entire board aspirants, when you talk about minority, you're now giving me a very diluted answer in regards to minority, because when it all began, it was black or white. So now when I hear minority, you may say 19%. That doesn't tell me what I really want to know. So think about that in your answers. But my real question goes back to 53 years ago, when Charlotte-Mecklenburg was ordered under federal court to desegregate its schools by busing. In the NFL and baseball and NBA, to strengthen the weakest teams, the best players are selected first and assigned to those teams. We talk about all of these Title I schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, but no board, nor any administration that I have seen over the last 53 years has had the intestinal fortitude to take the #1 draft picks, in other words, your best teachers, and put them into the schools where they are most needed. Why is that? And what is your position on moving the best teachers to the worst schools where they are needed most?
That's an operational question, but I'll take it from my perspective. I was one of those teachers that went to the Title I schools. I always worked in a Title I school because I saw that's where I could do my best work. After 25 years, I left that part and I went out to open up a new school in the Valentine area. I'd never had the experience of working in a new school. And I tell you, it was like day and night. Things that I did not have to do my job in my Title I school, it was in abundance at these new schools. They didn't even use the materials. So I gathered the materials out of the trash bin out back, and I gave them to other teachers that were still in the Title I schools. This district has tried for years to get teachers to move to high-need schools. Money is not going to drive them there. We had something called our STAR teachers. We've had all kinds of programs that were named some of everything to try to get teachers to go there. We even tried to get legislation that would say if the district pays for you to become Mary, what do they call those teachers? National Board Certified, then the district should be able to place you where you are needed because the district paid for that. We could not get the legislation to start that, and then they could not be forced to go to any schools. When a teacher applies for a job, they apply to Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. They will hear of an opening that's in another school. If they are hired, and I've seen it happen because I do my volunteer work out at West Mecklenburg High School. West Meck last year lost 5 teachers because they had hired them and they were set to come to West Meck. But when other positions open up, they lost them to Olympic, Providence, and Ardrey Kell. Teachers want to go where they think it is new and shiny. That's just, I don't know how you're going to change that mentality, but that's the reality of it. And you cannot legally force them to work any place that they don't choose to be at. And I know the dilemma. And that's the reality of what we're facing in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, you know, and I gave the best operational answer I can give, not being employed by CMS.
Yeah, you just said teachers go where it's new and shiny. You said that out of your own mouth.
They do.
Well, why are you building new and shiny? I mean, why are you building new and shiny? And you know the best teachers will go to the new and shiny. I mean, why can't you remodel schools? Or why can't you come in and put air conditioning systems in and stuff? That's what they do everywhere else. You know, why we have to be a new school where all construction money go to the mayor? You know, that don't make sense.
Tommy, my house needed a new air conditioning system. I had gotten it fixed 3 times.
I'm not
Fine. Wait, no, let me say this, because I said at the beginning, you get to a point where renovation is not taking care of the problem. So my unit had been renovated 3 times at a cost out of my pocket, because I don't have home shield. And so eventually, one of the smart guys finally said, Ms. McCray, you're gonna have to purchase a new entire unit. And that's what I had to do. So it gets to a point where renovation is not gonna solve the problems. And in a lot of those sites that you see, renovation is not gonna solve the problem. When a building is built, new teachers are hired for that building. Only a small percentage of already hired people can relocate or go into that building. So there's a percentage that can only go in. Everybody else is brand new to that building. Okay? That's how the policy works in CMS. I'm not on the HR side, but I know that because I had to wait whenever I got ready to transfer, because the principal had already gotten their quota of what they were supposed to take with them to that building.
Okay, I just want to throw this out here right now. Since we have a panel of people, and we know Mary, and Mary has been intricately involved as a board member. So we'd like to hear from some of these responses from some of the other of you that are up here, okay? So, the next question comes from Blanche.
Thank you. As I look at the voting yes, that number 2 gets me all the time. Minority students don't have an equal opportunity to learn, and outdated and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so for me, the question is, I worked at Bronze Elementary School, and I heard Miss Mary say something about Parks and Recreation, work for Parks and Rec for 30-some plus years, where Charlotte has a rec center, Bronze had one. I argued so many times about Bronze getting the service and the things that they did. They did not get it the time I was working there. Now, because of gentrification over there, everything is popping, and that's a problem for me. Because every time I would come in this center, Bronze, 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 and nothing was happening. But now everything is jumping off. And then I hear I got 2-part question, because when you talk about Black Political Caucus organizations and stuff, there's more organizations in the Black Political Caucus. So we need to understand that, number 1, because they're not the main one in our community. So we need to not just fix on certain ones, so we need to get to know some of these other organizations. But Ms. Mary, you also said, I don't want to focus too much on what you said, but because you were talking more, neighborhoods, improving our neighborhoods, okay. Now, it was not improved. Now it has been approved because of what's going on now. So I guess my biggest question, and it's okay that you're pouring money into the district too, but I live on the other side of town and y'all not pouring too much money over on my side of town, and we need some work too. And so we need to also look at a lot of these schools. So what do y'all plan on doing other than this mayor talking about what can we do for all of our neighborhoods, not just for certain ones and stuff? How are we gonna prioritize that?
So let me start with a couple of pieces. So the 35 sites that are in this bond were a subset of 125 projects that we actually need to accomplish in the next 10 years, and those needs are throughout the county. We are limited by what our funding partners have available in order to support our capital needs, and so we got to 30 projects and the $2.5 billion price tag. So the first piece is taking care of these projects and then being able to take care of projects 31 through 60, and then we're working our way down the list through the priorities, so that's part of that. The other piece is I think a lot of people think that when a bond passes, we get this giant check for $2.5 billion and I get to go to Cancun, and that's not the case at all. The county pays us project by project, month by month. So Bruns was a 2017 bond project, but because we get paid as we go on the projects that we do according to the county's cash flow, it's under construction now. So it's a 5-year CIP, but it's really a 7-year spend. So it's not that we're reacting to the neighborhood. It's that we had plans to replace Bruns. We had to get a bond passed in 2017 to do that, and the funding is showing up now. It's so happening that the neighborhood is changing now, but I lived on Wesley Heights Way when it was still called Tuckasegee. So, and I moved out to Allenbrook, so I am a child of the west side, and so, you know, I have seen what's happened there, but it's not because the school is doing something, and it's not that we waited to do something for the school because the neighborhood changed. It's because this is simply the way that things work and the time that it takes for us to be able to do what we need to do. And we are subject to all the same rules and regulations as any other developer in Mecklenburg County. So whether you're building apartments, a car wash, or a school, we have to go through the same design process. We have to go through the same permitting process. And then on top of that, there are requirements that are put upon us by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. They tell us what we have to do inside the schools with science labs and all those sorts of things, and the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So there were laws that were passed that now force us to accommodate 100% of what they estimate our stacking and queuing for cars on our site. So when you take into consideration, there's that requirement. And Mecklenburg County has requirements about water quality that are tied to the amount of impervious surface that you build, and that's the building and that's the parking lot. And then Charlotte has a tree save ordinance. We actually couldn't rebuild Allenbrook on the Allenbrook site today, even if there was no school there. If that was a clean site, we couldn't get a permit to replace Allenbrook on its site today. We could not build Allenbrook there because we could not meet all of the requirements that were put upon us by others as we build. And so we have to identify where we're gonna build the schools, how we're gonna build the schools. You have to build in the time to design and permit. It takes us about 9 months from the time the shovel goes in the ground to be able to open a school. But right now, the design and permitting process takes about 13 months for that same elementary school. So we're longer in design and permitting. And that's if we don't even have to rezone, because oftentimes we have to go through a zoning process in order to get, there's no by right zoning for schools in the city of Charlotte. So tying all those things together, it could take 2 years to be able to start the construction on a particular project, and then we're tied to the county's cash flow as well. So I think, you know, things might get conflated because we see one thing happening, we assume that's why something else is happening, when really we've been planning on replacing runs since 2013. When the 2013 bond passed, that was a priority. There wasn't a new opportunity for money till 2017, and then the time that it takes to get the project out of the ground and completed. And the rec center is definitely going to be part of that Bruns project, is part of the partnership with Mecklenburg County, because again, we recognize the importance of both Wallace Pruitt and that rec center, what that means to the neighborhood. But I just want everybody to understand that we're in circumstances that are not of our own making. It's the same thing with responding to growth. The city permits development, the towns permit development. They don't pay for the outcomes of that development. Mecklenburg County doesn't permit those multifamily units, but they're the ones who have to pay to build the schools that are necessary to address those things. So those disconnects, going back to what Mary said about the city, the county, and the Board of Education working together, are the things that create the environment, the atmosphere that we're responding to, and it means that we're constantly behind.
And I just want to, from an economic development standpoint, so the organization I lead is responsible for bringing more business into the entire region. So not just the city of Charlotte or Mecklenburg County, it's across 14 counties, North and South Carolina. And I'll just tell you, I've been doing this for 21 years now in different parts of the country. What I have come to appreciate is the evolution of realizing that in a community, it isn't about the new and the shiny, and isn't about gentrification today. Today it is about making holistic communities better and improving them so that we don't displace people in our neighborhoods, so that there is vibrancy across the community. And I will say, one of the things that attracted me to the opportunity in Charlotte is that I heard that from government, I heard that from the business, I heard that from nonprofits, and I think Charlotte does this well. And what I appreciate about this forum is that all of you are engaged to come in here and express your concerns and ask your questions, and that matters because what you've highlighted is that there does need to be more intentional collaboration between CMS, the city, and the county, nonprofits. Shay, I appreciated your question. I'm sitting up here representing the business community. The business community understands that we need a strong educational system. I made a choice, my husband and I made a choice to put our kids in public schools. I believe in public education. I also decided to put our kids in a public school at the time, because they were all in elementary school, where they were going to get the best education and the neighborhood was nice. And I think the point that Gary and the gentleman who has left were making is that we need schools to be strong anchors for our communities. And we do need the city and the county to be partners in making sure that the rest of the surrounding neighborhoods are safe, that there is housing, that there are jobs, that there is infrastructure and roads, that there are sidewalks, so that our kids can come to and from. Now, I grew up in a very small town in Florida, and when I go back and visit, at least now my dad now, because I've just recently relocated my mom here because she is suffering, she has ailments, and she's in a memory care facility here in Charlotte now, but all I see is the disinvestment that happened in the neighborhood that I grew up in. So I've been gone for 30 years away from that community. And what that tells me is that I got out. I got out because I wasn't going to make it if I stayed in the hometown that I grew up in. So my question really back to all of us is, what's the alternative? What are we saying to our kids if we don't show them, and the teachers, that we are investing in their schools where they're learning? I mean, I think that's the challenge that I would present to the entire community. I get the concerns, and I think that we can all work together to solve for these problems, but what is the alternative? We don't make these investments now, it's just gonna cost more money down the road. So I get what, and I appreciate the process that takes place to plan. It is process. I mean, God bless the people who work in government, because it takes a long time, but I think what we need to do is hold each other accountable and make sure that we are partnering on these things to have better outcomes for our kids. I'm sorry, it's getting that. Sorry.
Okay, Rosalind. Can you hear me?
Did you turn on? It looks like it's on. Okay.
Good morning, my name is Rosalind Allison Jacobs, and I'd like to share a concern and get your feedback. So I've worked on multiple bond campaigns in Charlotte, and I gotta say, this one is what I could best describe as low-key to almost invisible. And I'm not seeing the presence of the business community, the public sector, the private sector. I'm not seeing everybody all in on these bonds. And I wanna know what your strategy is to get folks out and energized and mobilized around this, because I'm not seeing signs, I'm not seeing commercials, I'm not seeing anything.
Thank you for your question. So we do have signs out. By law, we can't put signs 30 days prior to election day. So that's why you haven't seen these signs out on the road. So those signs are going up. We are doing a direct mail campaign that will go to voters across the county. I've been in talks with Black Radio as early as a couple weeks ago. We're going to be going up on Black Radio. We also have a digital campaign going on where you're going to start seeing, it's already out there on Facebook, Instagram, pictures like these and information behind that. As far as TV, we're not going up on TV. That is pretty expensive. The Charlotte media market is one of the most expensive in the state. So we're not going up on TV. But we've been basically talking to our neighbors, talking to voters. We've had town hall meetings. We have been to various events across the county, but you're going to see it more pick up literally this week. Like the visibility part, we just could not put out signs. If we started putting out signs on the corner right here, they would have came and picked, and they would have came in and just picked them up, because by law, we cannot put those down, but you will start to see those.
Rosalind, any group that calls me, I'm available. I was on last night with the Mecklenburg delegation, talking to them and anyone else that was a part of their listening tour. I was with a group of Clanton Park residents on Saturday. So I am trying to get to as many groups as I can, because with the new laws that's been placed on us, we can't, as Doug said, put those signs out. We gotta be very selective by what we do now. I put mine in my yard, so that.
Folks have gotten signs and it's out in their yards, but they're not on the street right now, but it's in people's yards. Yeah, so.
So I understand. I've said the same thing. We do not have the visibility that is needed to run this campaign, and I feel like we're being hampered.
Okay, you can hear me. Oh, I see your hand, but let me, my question, okay? Okay, I just wanted to, and I'm kind of piggybacking on Rosalind about people not being really energized. And I think that it's the message that you're giving that children learn better in a new school. You keep equating academic achievement to the building. Now, the problem that I have with that, and people in my age group have with that, because I started school in a very segregated school. My father was a high school principal in an all-black school in Gaston County. We used those old textbooks that came from the white schools. We had the old band uniforms, all of that. But you know what? That whole senior class went to college. You know what I mean? And people, I didn't know anybody that could not read. You know, I didn't know anybody. I mean, we were very, very successful. Even some of the most successful people here in Charlotte graduated from Reed High School. Okay? And Second Ward High School, same thing. Second Ward and West Charlotte High School. Back with, way back in the, way back. So I don't think an old building equates, I don't think a new building equates academic achievement. I think that's one of the problems that this committee has, although I do agree that these buildings need to be replaced and renovated. I don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with saying that it equates to academic achievement, which I keep hearing. Also, when it comes to teachers, I think human resources can do something about that. You can do that. We keep saying that they won't come. We give them incentives. Now, why are they getting incentives to? If you're hired as a teacher, you go where the need is. Why should one school have 5 math teachers and another school, they don't have any math teachers, they have substitutes? I think that's a fix right there. I'm sorry. She told me.
I'll comment on that real quick. Mary, you can chime in. No, I agree with you that, so having a new school is not the silver bullet. It's part of a solution that needs to happen, in my opinion, for education to improve. I agree with you about that. I mean, my father was from Jamaica, and he went to school in the hills of Jamaica, only got an 8th grade education, came to this country, became a supervisor in New York, and did very well for us as a family. And you're right. I mean, the generation that taught me was the civil rights generation, and they went to schools, like you said, that were segregated, and they still learned. I even had to come to grips with me getting older, that I've seen kids that are younger than me can't hang with some of the stuff that I went through in the 80s and 90s. But, times have changed. And I believe that this is just part of the solution. The questions that I've heard and the concerns I've heard are all legitimate concerns. I think that one of the problems that we're not addressing here is it's not solely on CMS or City of Charlotte. It's really the General Assembly too. The General Assembly passed a budget that did not give teachers a raise that's in line with inflation today. So even if CMS tried to put out all these incentives, the state, teachers are state employees, as you know, and so they're going to get paid by the state. And if they're saying that North Carolina is only giving a 4% raise to teachers, then they're going over to Fort Mill, where they're getting paid a little bit more. So this is just a small part, in my opinion, of the solution of us trying to narrow that gap between our kids and white students.
As I'm reading through this bond book and this list of projects, it highlights for me something I say all the time. Black people in Charlotte are continuously pimped and don't even understand the name of the game and what's going on. Ms. Mayor said herself, teachers like to go to nice and shiny new things. As I look at these project lists, the brand new nice and shiny schools are going to Cornelius and Huntersville and going to South Charlotte and Matthews. Yeah, there's some renovation projects going on here, but these renovation projects should have happened a long time ago, if we're being honest. But neither here nor there. Again, it goes back to the notion of Black people, because your cost will go up to build schools in other communities. That's what frustrates me. What's the timeline to receive this money? Because as you alluded to earlier, we're just now seeing projects. It just so happens to coincide with gentrification, but it's old bond money. When will we see this bond money if passed?
So I want to address first and foremost, we're replacing Allenbrook, we're replacing Wilson, we're replacing everything at Harding that hasn't been replaced to date. So it's not just Cornelius or Matthews.
No, I said the new school.
The new school, Allenbrook's a brand new school, and there's a West Regional Athletic Facility co-located with the Allenbrook campus on Freedom Drive.
So it's
Wilson is a new school. Harding will be a completely new school when we're done, because the gym just opened as part of the 2017 bond project, and G building was bond before. So those are new schools, all new athletic fields, all new complexes. So I want to be clear, there are new schools going in on the west side.
Closer to Camp Green?
Allenbrook is going across Freedom Drive in the old driving range, if you took driver's ed, because as I mentioned, we can't build Allenbrook on Allenbrook.
Right.
So we'll build it. No, right across Freedom Drive, on the other side of the cemetery, directly across Freedom Drive.
We don't.
Right, so.
Excuse me. Remember, we do not debate, we don't go back and forth, and we've got to get in more control of what we're doing right now, because we have about 4 or 5 people that have questions. So I would like for Natalie, if you would help us, if we would just please ask your question, be directed to a person or everyone that you want to answer the question. Ask a question. We don't need any more commentaries. Ask a question, and if you all would answer 1 minute, and if you all would answer the question 30 seconds for the question. And if you all would answer that question, and if you direct it to the individual, these are several rules of order, and we've just gone off the track. We've just gone off the track a little bit. So, Louise Woods, Gary, would you give that microphone to Louise Woods?
Well, the question was, when is the money going to come into play?
Okay, yes.
So we're starting on design on the early priority projects, including Second Ward right now. The county advanced us a little bit of money. But again, as I mentioned, it's about a 7-year spend to have everything complete. So everything will start in the next year, 2, 3 years, but some of these projects take more time than others because of the sheer, you're working on an occupied campus, right? So taking parking into consideration, we build the new, then we move everybody into the new, then we demolish the old, then we go back with parking, and we go back with fields and all those sorts of things. So pieces go quicker than others, and you have time in order to accomplish the logistics of the entire project. So it'll probably be about 7 years before we're done with everything.
Okay, we have Louise, Carlenia, Ken, Blanche, and Shay. So 30 seconds.
I agree wholeheartedly about the need for new and renovated schools to make situations where teachers can teach and students can learn. And so, but I would like the focus to be on not just new, but what is actually happening to the environment. So how can you, as a group supporting the bonds, make clearer what the real things like mold and mildew and all the terrible situations that our students and teachers are in now, and what you're going to be doing at every school that you touch to make the school more conducive to learning for students?
I think a lot of it, Louise, is people are trying to be respectful of the buildings. I don't just go around telling people Berry Hill Elementary sits on a septic system. And they're the only elementary school that's on a septic system. And you know what happens to septic systems when the weather gets too cold, too rainy. And you know, we should not have elementary children in a situation like that where they can't have running water and can't use their bathrooms. So I hear what you're saying, and I will make a concentrated effort. I just won't call the name of the school because I don't want to disrespect anyone who is working in that building or any child that's attending school in that building.
Okay. Carlene.
Good morning. Thank you for coming today. And mine is a statement. I keep hearing business community, and this is why we support. You know, I'm an advocate for grassroots, and I do know I have seen signs off Providence Road. I have not seen signs where I live off of Bakersford Road. And I want you to step up and make sure the citizens who are going to benefit from this know why they should vote yes or no. I can't say, because I'm employed. But I don't feel, I echo what Roz said. I don't think that we have done a great job in making sure, and Mary, thank you for going to Clanton Park, that people have done a great job in making sure that individuals from the west side and the east side know about what's happening. And I have an announcement on the top.
Okay, Ken.
In regards to the exposure, the board is bound by the law that you can't do it within 30 days. Private industry is not. So the bond is restricted. Those restrictions don't apply to private entities. The legislature pay That's why they give you local supplements, but you haven't had a county commission nor a board strong enough to push them to implement an increase in taxes to give teachers those supplements. My other thing is, my dad was also a principal. And yes, I'm fixing to ask a question. Why should I have these concerns when I hear board people talking about the group of kids is, the group of kids are, and I hear someone else who wants to be on the board, if they're not already, talking about would have came. I don't want to see that in my board people. So how do we get around that?
Is that anybody want to ask that question? Okay. Dennis, thank you so much for giving us that data as far as the process, because that process is definitely long. Now, I don't know who did this right here for y'all. I'm Dr. Blanchpin, and I really look at stuff now more. When I read a lot of these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, we got to do some work on this, because when I read it, I would vote no, because it's not saying anything to me that would help my children, 16 grandchildren in school. So my question is, can we do a better job than these 5 reasons that you got right here? Because this needs to be improved some type of way.
And why didn't it say how much the bond is for?
Yeah, so who did this and who can improve this? Or what are we gonna do? Because it's not selling me.
Thank you for that, and the campaign team did that. We welcome your input and your feedback, and we're happy to revisit that. I think I've heard in here multiple times the message isn't working, the message isn't resonating, and obviously if we want people to come out and support this, we're gonna need to understand what works for you. So I think but we also want to need to be factual to the campaign, right, to the actual project. So thank you for that. I'd love to hear your input.
Why doesn't it say how much the bond is for?
I don't know the answer to why it doesn't say that, but thank you.
Shay, you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Sorry, it just got a little bit thrown off there. I echo Blanche, the flyer doesn't really do it for me either, but I wanted to go back to my earlier question and just kind of explain a little bit and then ask again. But when I'm talking about a bond referendum, we have this $2 billion to spend. We know we're going to go into specific neighborhoods and get a new building. And that's what you guys are up here to talk about and responsible for. What I'm looking for is how we use that as a stepping stone to build equity in that full community. If we're gonna build up a new school, supporting the businesses that are gonna be there. Are we promoting businesses that are gonna be there? And how are we working together to take advantage of that wholly?
So mechanically, we do an awful lot of joint use, whether it's with Park and Rec or the library, and then, community and extended use. And so our real goal is for our facilities to be in use 18 hours a day by the community. And we do, heavily discounted rates for folks. So, whatever it is, if you want to, use classrooms to teach a class, if you want to offer something, if you want to use the school on a weekend, you want to use the grounds on a weekend, all of those things are available through our community use department, and we want to be an asset to the community. I think that's the other thing, where when we have these new facilities and they have the amenities that folks need and want to support their programming, then that also becomes another way that building becomes an asset for the neighborhood and the communities that they're in. There are things that you can do at a new Allenbrook that you can't do at Allenbrook today, right? With the 21 classrooms and the one entrance and all those sorts of things. So really being able to accommodate those uses and being available and accessible for folks to use our buildings to do the things they want to do is key to us today. We welcome those opportunities.
One of the first questions that I asked Dennis when I was looking over these projects, and I sat down and was talking with him, why are we demolishing the old Allenbrook? Why are we demolishing the old Berry Hill? If the community finds that there is some kind of use that they can have for those buildings, are we going to allow that? And excuse me?
I'm sorry, and fund it. That's the building's fine, but if
and truly, you can give the community that choice. Maybe not all parts of the building, but some parts of the building could be used. Because a lot of these schools, they do have new libraries. And so that library could be the part that's kept open so that the community could use that part of the building.
Yeah, we have made surplus property available for lease to others, and in that instance, the entity rents it for basically $1 a year, but they're 100% responsible to operate and maintain it. We won't contribute anything to that, but in return, you're only paying $1 for the facility. So there's a use, to Mary's point, for the existing Allen Brook in that neighborhood in a way that they could be different from a school use. Those are conversations we're open to as well.
Okay, I have a question. I'd like to know if you all can share with us some of the other individuals that we feel are representing us, and I'm talking about this group in particular, on that committee, on your bonds committee, because as you hear today, we feel as though some of the issues that we have have not been addressed. Can you all share with us some other individuals that are on the bond committee, or the promotion of the bonds committee, that we don't see here this morning?
Doug, do you know who's part of that volunteer committee?
Like 40 people. So it's about, in number, it's 30, but you know, when you have a large group of people, you're not always going to get full participation. But some of the folks on there is SY. She's on there. And
Mason.
yes, Mr. Mason is on there. As well as some other former elected officials as well. I can't give off a lot of names. I have to look at the list and just say, but there's a good number of folks on there.
But we certainly would welcome more
we certainly
volunteer
welcome more
participants.
volunteers, of course.
Absolutely.
Colette Forrest is on there.
Sorry, ma'am.
Colette Forrest.
Yes, Colette.
Yes, Colette's on there too, yes.
Do you have a plan, once you demolish the buildings that are standing, do you have a plan to reuse that property or sell it or anything like that?
So kind of case by case, right? So like Chantilly, for example, it's all floodplain. So we're in conversations with Park and Rec about that being a park, right? So, you know, that building's beyond. And so, you know, there's not much that can really be done with that site. But, you know, to the extent that there is a community user or there was somebody who was interested in purchasing or whatever, those are conversations we have. So it really come down to a case by case basis. Like, we know we can't use the Allen Brook site or the building, but if somebody else has a use, then those would be the things that we would work through.
Okay, we've taken all of the questions and you all have given us your responses. And let's give them a round of applause. We appreciate your coming, and if you come back, bring all the answers for this group, you know, and we would like everyone to be vocal, you know, about what you have. And if there's any way that you can change this flyer, because I don't think anyone is sold on the flyer here this morning in terms of supporting the bond. But we do appreciate your coming, and Mary knows to coming from our and we'll take announcements. I think we have some announcements.
I have an announcement. Today, I want to thank the residents of the east side. Louise is one. I want to thank Dedrick, who has been there, supported us. But as of last night, we want to thank the city council. They did say that we will move forward and the two groups will collaborate. We will compromise. Eastland Mall will have an anchor facility that would house an indoor skating ring, indoor track. It will have 14 basketball courts. It will also have a wall of fame for South Carolina, North Carolina. It will have a learning center. It will have pickleball. It will have 6 soccer fields. It will have indoor and outdoor restaurants and volleyball. The renderings are amazing. I'd love to bring them here for the Tuesday morning forum. It is going to be a state-of-the-art destination for the city of Charlotte and for that community. And that was a community with, resilience. It's an opportunity also to engage the west side. With the west side, we will be partnering with Johnson C. Smith with their gaming and also their sports administration team at JCSU. I'm so proud and so happy.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements?
I hope I can make it. I was asked by Dr. Maurice Green to make the announcement that he is a candidate for the North Carolina State Superintendent of Public Instruction position. Maurice Green was formerly an assistant superintendent here in CMS and went on to become superintendent in Guilford County. Yes, Mo Green. I want to give his real name. And he also wanted you all to know that anytime you want him to come down, he's willing and able. Thank you.
He's excellent.
Okay, thank you. We've got to reset this room. Louise, I'm sorry, you have an announcement?
Well, I'm hoping somebody else has an announcement because I think I hear people saying they want signs. Do you really have some signs that we can pick up and put in our neighborhood?
Yeah.
Where can we get them?
Yes, we have signs. We have them housed at 330 South Tryon Street, the headquarters of the Alliance. We have the signs there. And yeah, and we also bring them next week as well.
Thank you all so much.